this first scan we took around 4.5 feet off the ground. This solid dark coloration around the circumference indicates that this tree is solid.
Like you were telling me off camera, this one scan literally means nothing.
Doesn't mean anything out of context.
So you need multiple scans from various regions in the tree to determine what's going on, especially with the defect that we saw at the base of the tree.
Correct. So it's likely that that defect noted at the base of the tree is connected to this. But like I said, most big old trees have this, and it's not realistic to condemn a tree strictly on a little bit of hollowing in its midsection. If we were going to use that as a metric to preserve trees, then that means we have no big trees.
What's going on, my friends? It's Austin here from Elevate Applicate, bringing you yet another video in regards to pesticide applicator content, certified arborist content, plant healthcare content, and really anything that I'm dealing with. Today, I'm actually at a client of mine's property, and I called in another company to do an assessment of a tree. It's a pretty in-depth assessment. If you're just getting into the pesticide applicator industry or plant healthcare, this is probably pretty advanced for you. But I think you should see what this is about. I think that you should be exposed to this and understand why it is that we're doing what we're doing. So I'm over here with a company called Tree First. We got a board certified master arborist, Jeremiah Sandler, on site, and Jack, who's also a certified arborist. And they're going to do an assessment of a tree that a client of mine contacted me last fall and basically said, hey, I'm concerned. It's a huge tree. It's right next to my house. I'm worried about risk. And here is the massive oak tree. Here's the house. So we have our targets. And now we sent pictures of a decay down at the base of the tree, which is not good. And so what Jack and Jeremiah are here to do, they're going to use a special device to basically test and see inside of a tree. Here's the decay pocket. The client noticed a bunch of mushrooms growing in here and was concerned. There's obviously a pretty deep hollow in here. And so how do you make determinations for plant healthcare for a tree? What kind of management strategy to encourage this tree to live a long, happy, healthy life, longer than it already has? This tree's well over 100 years old. It's 4.5 feet in diameter, and for Michigan, that's a very sizable tree. So a part of this process is putting all these nails in. And what is this process called, Jeremiah?
We're doing sonic tomography.
Sonic tomography. So essentially these nails, we're hammering them, and then that's going to push sound inside the tree, and we'll be able to see if there's decay or sound wood. Is that the correct understanding of this?
Yeah, so as I hit each of these nails, these sensors are detecting how fast the sound waves are moving through the tree. And with some incredible software, it puts all of those measurements together and produces an image. Then, with that image, we can plug information from that image into some stem breakage analysis software that can help us quantify or put numbers to how much strength has been lost in that region that we tested. And this can give us meaningful information on how stable a tree is. And this is
it's really critical, right? Because if you want to preserve this tree, I mean, what would you guys estimate this tree is age-wise?
At least 100 plus.
Yeah, 100 plus years old. If you want to preserve a 100 plus year old tree on your property, you see mushrooms, which are an indication there's decay. It could be structurally weak. How do you come to that determination? You need enough data, right, to make a sound, educated decision on whether to remove it or to encourage health, reduce stress, what type of pruning you might want. So this is a super special service. How did you guys get into this?
Caring about trees.
Caring about trees.
Yeah, so we started getting into some of these more
advanced tools.
Maybe back in like 2018. And we saw pretty quickly that
There's a market for it.
There's a market for it, and in a totally selfish sense, it's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun to actually look closely at these things, especially when there's not a ton of folks investigating trees all that closely.
So this is giving you probably more data when you look at trees in general to possibly sense what you might find doing one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of these have you guys done?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say well over 50.
Yeah.
50?
We're
Well
in
over
that,
50.
in that ballpark, yeah.
And it's not something that we do for every tree. I mean, this has to...
It's special.
This isn't warranted all the time.
It's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we can assess without the use of advanced tools if something is extremely good or extremely bad.
And also using this tool has sort of keyed us in on certain features where, you know, we're more familiar with how the inside of a tree might look based on previous scans.
And what the outside looks like.
Correct.
Right.
So, you know, we can either, you know,
So
make
internally in your mind, you're getting more data when you can assess a tree from the outside, what you might find on the inside.
Yeah.
And this is helping you, what would the word be? Like reinforcing your thought process, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is pretty simple. You're just walking around, hammering this nail with the special tool. It's gathering the data, and then it sends it back to the device.
Yep. So we're gonna have to make a couple of passes with the sensors at each of these data points.
Okay.
So after 3 passes, we'll have an image.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna jump right to that image because I don't think you guys want to see a bunch of hammering nails.
Not the most exciting part.
So once we get to the image, or maybe when they're setting the nails or something like that, we'll jump back in.
Oh, it's not.
So then, press escape, and you get a preliminary, looks pretty, what we might expect from a big old oak. Likely some hollowing in the center, but a nice solid shell wall around the circumference, a good sign.
A good sign.
Jack, do you want to set up the next?
You want me to do the big
Good news.
Yeah.
So we just got the first image back of all the nails in the trees and the hammering. Take it away, Jeremiah.
So this first scan we took around 4.5 feet off the ground. This solid dark coloration around the circumference indicates that this tree is solid around its circumference. It is totally normal and expected for big old oaks like that one to have some degrees of hollowing in the middle. So this blue indicates either highly decayed wood or that it is hollow. Another thing you'll notice are these yellow lines. These can indicate cracks. Sometimes cracks can cause a false positive. So we have a separate tool called the resistance drill to verify the presence of this crack that the tomography tool has detected. So if we can verify the presence of this crack, this would indicate that this reading is accurate.
And so, like you were telling me off camera, this one scan literally means nothing.
Doesn't mean anything out of
Right.
context.
So you need multiple scans from various regions in the tree to determine what's going on, especially with the defect that we saw at the base of the tree.
Correct. So it's likely that that defect noted at the base of the tree is connected to this. But like I said, most big old trees have this. And it's not realistic to condemn a tree strictly on a little bit of hollowing in its midsection. If we were going to use that as a metric to preserve trees, then that means we have no big trees around. So
Yeah.
it's worthwhile to think about how to maintain trees that are less than perfect. Because in fact, most of the coolest and oldest trees are not perfect.
Yeah, they have tons of defects.
Yeah.
And so again, this client's objective is mainly a risk assessment, right? Because he wants to ensure that his tree's safe around his house, but he also wants to preserve this beautiful old oak tree. So he was willing to take the time, pay the money to have these guys come out and perform this test so he, as a client, could make an educated decision on his tree.
Right. And it's a good distinction to make that this is not a health assessment. This is a risk assessment. Normal, healthy trees can hollow out. Hollowing is not a property that only unhealthy trees have. Both unhealthy trees and healthy trees can hollow out.
Yeah,
And a health analysis.
And if we look at
using-
this tree from a distance, I'm sure that in the summer when this thing's fully leafed out, it looks great. More
Right.
than likely.
Yeah.
Right.
And we also think that because all of the sapwood, the outermost rings of the tree, are still solid and functional.
Yes. Well, now we gotta get some more scans and see what this thing looks like through like a 3-dimensional type plane, as far as, you know, top section, middle section, lower section. And then they'll be able to create a report and data and submit this to the client. Yeah, just wanted to let you guys know this is what we're doing. This is what's going on. I think we're gonna do the basal one now.
This area.
Yeah, because one is here.
Yeah.
So 9 and 10.
That's
So
okay.
it thinks that there's a crack here, and it probably is just
Right
I think this is.
All right, so Jack and Jeremiah just put this crazy tool together. What is this?
These are the calipers for the tomograph. So this helps us get a very accurate representation of the geometry of the plane that we're measuring.
Okay, so when we did the top one, we didn't need to use them because it was more circular.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But this one, because it's more at the root flare, we have this irregular shape. This is basically going to help us get the actual shape of what we're seeing and where the decay features are.
Yep, and
Right.
then we often do this if there are certain features that we want to make sure we capture more thoroughly.
Okay. So basically, with this being all the root flare, we have indentations,
Okay,
valleys,
These are all rights.
we're trying to capture. And actually, upon assessment of installing the nails, we noticed this hollow right here, and we saw with a laser pointer how far down it went. So is this a two-man job?
A lot easier.
Yeah, it looks like it.
We've done them solo, but it does.
It's challenging.
Crab arms, the bigger you get,
More challenging it is.
Yeah, it's.
So essentially right now, you have one point that is still and one point that's mapping out this.
The distance
Okay.
between from one to the other point.
Gotcha. So it's like
Now
boom,
we're 2
boom.
and 7.
Yep. 3 to 7.
So this is nowhere near as sexy as the videos that you see of people cutting down trees, but it's probably more important.
I would argue that.
For sure.
I don't know, you could do some funny stuff with the calipers.
All right, so now we're 7 to 13.
All right, so we just got done, actually not me, Jack and Jeremiah did, but they put this basal, all these nails in the basal area of this tree, and we got a new scan, which is kind of what this looks like here. And now what are you seeing on the scan, Jeremiah?
Pretty much exactly like we thought it would look. Most big old trees have hollowing in their bases. That's part of the tree aging process, and that's not anything to be afraid of on its own. So a few things about this particular scan itself. So this is how you might assess some of these features after you take a scan, is that you look at the points and see where the decay is in relation to these points. For instance, it says here at point number 4, there is a lot of decay close to the shell wall of this tree. So we'll look at point 4 on the tree itself.
Which is this guy in this
And we'll
root
see if
flare.
there's any features around that point that support what we're seeing.
Which we noticed that there's a little,
There's a little something.
a critter's getting down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that we want to check out, from the outside of this tree, we can see around between points 9 and 10, we see visually that there is some interesting features here.
Yeah, we
So-
definitely have decay going on in between this. From that decay part. This was actually exposed when Jack was putting in the nails here from that piece.
So we can see between points 9 and 10 that there is some funk in here. And that also aligns with what we see on the scan. Here's point 9, here's point 10. The space in between, so this all tracks. The next step for us is to put these images into our 3D scans. This can also help us see just how functional the outer circumference actually is.
Okay.
When we use a 3D scan, we're getting a bunch, like actually thousands of points around the circumference. With this, we're only getting 18 points. So this is a very rough geometric representation of this horizontal plane. So once we actually put this into a 3D scan,
You can see how everything's functioning.
well, we can also see, usually when we do that, we see that there is more living wood than what this captures. This is only measuring between points. It's not capturing all of these small, subtle curvatures and shape. It sees straight lines between each point. And so sometimes this can create a percentage of living wood that's actually less than what's
What's
there.
Okay.
So pretty much every time we do a 3D scan in combination with a tomography scan, we, by fact of math and science, we actually boost how much living tissue is actually there. This can show us a percentage of how much tissue is functional and how much is dysfunctional, but that goes up when you put that into a more geometrically accurate cross-section.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
So, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, right, you can go from being a pesticide applicator, just getting into this industry, to doing something as advanced as this on trees. And it all depends on what route and road you want to go down.
And how you think about trees.
And how you think about trees. I align with these guys. We want to preserve trees and take care of them and reduce pesticides and live with trees that have defects and knowing that the defects can be okay. I actually got to run. I got to go spray trees for some plant healthcare work, but I wanted to show you what these guys do. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but fairly regularly this is done. So,
Yeah.
Thank you again, Jeremiah. I appreciate you, man.
Of course.
Take care.
I'll see you
Jack,
next time.
thanks, sir.
Yeah, of course.
Take care, man. You guys have fun. Hopefully this guy pans out. This is actually measured. It was what, 79 feet tall and 4.5 feet diameter. So we'll check you later.